So what I'm going to show you here are 3 ways to bring your Rhino files into Revit. The first one is pretty dead simple. You don't really have to do anything else. But it's not really bringing it from Rhino to Revit, it's really bringing an image in and tracing over it. The second one is more akin to maybe what you did last semester, which is taking a section of your building and making a DWG out of it. You can use that as a CAD file to bring into Revit. And the third method is going to be actually taking your 3D geometry and bringing it into Revit. I know we had a lot of problems with that last semester. If it works for you, it works, but I think the other 2 methods will be just as easy as well. So the first method is taking an image and bringing it in. We printed all our floor plans as images, so I'm going to move to the or as PDFs. The method is very similar between the two. But I'm going to go to a floor plan here in this file that I've given you. The site is not on the floor plan, and that's why you don't see it. And I'm in a collaborative file here, and I created a new work set called DWGs. You can create this import, you can call this imports or whatever, but just, if you're collaborating, you might as well make a work set with that. What we're going to do is actually, and I've graded the inactive work sets, by the way, so that's why everything's gray. I'm going to go to insert here, and I'm just going to do an import image file. I'm going to navigate to where I needed to find that floor plan, and I'm just going to place it. When you place it, if you're in a hidden line mode or a shaded mode, you won't really see it very well. There's a couple ways you can bring this to the front. One is to go over here on the draw layer and bring this forward to the foreground. But I find this very hard to be able to move your stuff where it needs to be, so I'm going to keep this on the background. And I'm actually going to go into a wireframe mode, and this will allow me to see through the floor. The second thing I need to do is scale this up. Now the image that I've given you actually has a scale on it, so we can use the scale command, RE, or we can just go up here and hit scale on the modify tab. We're going to hit the first, we're going to hit the 0. Zoom in a little bit so we can get almost to the pixel here. We're going to hit where the 30 is, and then we're going to type 30 and enter. And so now if we draw an annotation line or a model line here, you can see that if we start from here to here, this is 30 feet. So this is perfectly to scale. We know that this is already facing north, so we're good to go. And then I just need to move this from this point to where it needs to be on the site. So that should snap into place. And it's not 100% perfect. You can see that it's maybe a little bit off. So you could rescale it to the site. Actually, a bigger dimension might help you here. So we're gonna scale it from this to this, and then that will give you all of your lines that you need for your rooms, for instance. So that's the first method. It's not super complicated, and it doesn't really get to any sort of parametric or snappability. So the second method is to make a DWG out of your Rhino file. So here I have 2 clipping planes. One was establishing the floor plan, the other was establishing the view depth. I'm going to go ahead and turn this on in the perspective mode. And I need to take a floor plan of this. Actually, I don't really need to turn it on, but it might help me in the end. So I'm actually going to go to a front view, and I'm going to see what's happening in other views here too. I'm going to move this over just a little bit so I know where I'm sectioning. And I'm going to run a command called section. And I know I want to take a section of sort of generally this stuff. I don't really need this stuff above, so I'm going to inclusively select here. It's going to select a bunch of other things. That's totally fine as long as I get everything sort of in there, in the realm where I need to take the cut. I'm also going to make sure that assigned by layers is assigned by input object. That's going to help your DWG in the end. And then I'm going to draw from one side of the building to the other, making sure that it's on the ortho. I'm not cutting somewhere else. And that's it. I can right click or hit enter. At this point you have a section of your building. You can actually see it here, but it's right in that cutting plane, so we might have some issues finding it, and we might have some issues importing it into Revit. So what I recommend doing is, while you have this selected, you can either group it right now so you don't have to worry about deselecting and then trying to find it. It's also probably on a make 2D layer that got pushed in here if you didn't change the assign by layers. If you did, then they're going to stay on the same layer, obviously. But I'm going to run a command called move, and I'm going to turn the vertical on. And I'm going to start it from this clipping plane, and I'm going to make sure I'm selecting something on the ground, like the site plane or whatever. I need to do that one more time. Select the clipping plane, make sure vertical is on. And the first time I did it in the front view, and vertical here is actually into the page, so that's why it's weird. I'm going to actually group it just so I don't lose this. And then I'm going to right click on the grid lines, select objects, and now I have both the grid and the newly created plan. I can type isolate here, and you can see what the result was, especially if you look up here. Let's turn the grid lines off actually, and now you can see it's sort of faint, but that's because it's the blue from the residential. If you don't want that, you can keep it on the output to by new layer, so it will be all on a make 2D layer. It doesn't really matter, but this way I know that this is all my sort of residential units, and I know the outlines of all of them, and I know where my sort of fan units are for the individual rooms. So now that we know that it's all on the ground, I can just select all of this stuff and run the export command. I'm going to go to the whatever location and just call it residential floor plan. And then I'm going to make this an AutoCAD DWG on the drop down. It doesn't matter if you have AutoCAD installed or not. And then we want to make sure that this is either default or 2007 lines. So I'm going to hit OK here. That was saved really quickly because it wasn't a lot of material. Let's just go ahead and delete this. And I'm going to go to the 3D, Insert, and we're going to Import CAD. Now I can scroll down here, find that residential floor plan. I can keep all of this the way, you know, it is set by default, because I know that this file was set up with the origin at the same place as the origin of the Rhino file. So I'm going to hit open, and then you can see that the floor plan is imported. You might not be able to select it if your pinned elements is deselected, and because these import as pinned elements, so you can't accidentally move them around. But I'm going to keep it as a pinned element. And so now you can see if I go to my level 1 plan, you can see that I have this floor plan here. It might be a little bit hard with all your grid lines to show up, so I'm going to go to VV, go to annotation categories, and just turn my grids off. And now I can see this floor plan here. Let's go to a hidden line mode. It might be a little bit easier, or a shaded mode. If you are having trouble seeing the lines, you can always go to VV and go to imported categories. And if you go to the residential floor plan, you can actually override the line projection here. So let's just override these all to black. And now you can see your floor plan a little bit easier, but they're still governed by the layers. So that's the second method. You can also move this up to wherever you need to be. So instead of importing it to level 1, you could always import it, if you have your levels done, to whatever level you need it to be on. So you can build your tower essentially from the ground up, if that's the method that you want to use. You can also use this for sections or elevations. So I'll show elevations in another video. But the third method I'm going to show you is just importing as essentially a 3D model or an STL. So for the third method, I want to go to back to my Rhino file. I want to show everything here, and let's just Control Z through that process so I get back to the main building here. Yeah, there we go. Let's just turn my clipping planes off, so let's choose a main here. I want to select everything here. Actually, I don't need to select the lot curb. I don't even need the parking lot, but we can include it. We'll see what happens. And then I'm going to run a command called export again, and we're going to go to a DWG. We'll call this full tower export. And now we want to make this 2007 solids. We're going to hit OK. And it might tell us that some objects could be exported. That's okay. That's probably a lot of these lines, or some objects that just don't transfer to DWGs. And now we can go to 3D and we can actually import CAD. There's a couple ways we can do this. I'm going to show you a couple different ways. And we can find that DWG and we could just find the full tower export. And there we go. That was pretty simple, right? We just exported as a DWG and it was totally fine. Let's go ahead and go back to Rhino. I want to select everything again and we're going to export here. And I'm just going to export as a Rhino file, Rhino 7 file. So we'll call this floor plan, full tower export, get rid of the DWG tag. Go back to Revit. This is going to be pinned and I'll just delete it and we'll see what happens with this this other method of importation. So I'm going to go to import CAD again. I want to drop this down to Rhino files since 2020 I think Revit has supported importing Rhino files. And then we're going to find full tower export and see what happens. You have this import as category here, generic models, you know, a bunch of other things. I think generic models is probably the best for us. Site could work as well, but you have other elements that are the site, so we're just going to hit open. And this guy worked as well. You might find that there are problems with wall by face, since this won't link to it. I think then the DWG import might be the better way to do it. There is a third method here, which I'll show you. We're going to go to Architecture Component Model in Place, and we're going to make a generic model. We're going to call this Rhino Import. And then under Insert here, this is where we're going to import the CAD. So the first process is the same. Actually, let me go ahead and export this as an SAT file. So I'm going to select everything. And then we're going to make this an ACIS, full tower export. Just rename it. Default's fine for these guys. Okay, that's fine. It's not going to export the curves, but that's okay. Was successfully exported. We're going to go into Revit here. We're still modeling in the generic model, and now I'm going to import CAD. But here you can see there's the ACIS SAT file. Then we can find the full tower export. We still want to import it as a generic model. And there it is. So we're going to hit finish here. And now if we go to architecture wall by face, you can see that this is going to work for you. The DWG should work for you as well. But just in case that doesn't work, that is the third method here.